for the second catch-up episode of what we read for 2021.
2020 catch-up edition.
Basically.
That's
where
right.
we're still talking about the books that we read in either November or December of last year.
That's right. All right.
I'm gonna kick things off with something that actually comes out this month.
Hell yeah.
I don't know if by the time this video goes up, it'll actually be out, but it is a book called Shipped by Angie Hockman.
Cool.
I've actually talked about this one already in another video, which I'll link down below. But Shipped is essentially a coworker romance where there are two coworkers, Henley, and I want to say his name is, I can't say it, Graham? I think it's pronounced Graham. Anyway, they are rivals, or at least they are in Henley's mind, because it seems like Graham is always getting like the opportunities and the praise, and he's not particularly helpful when it comes to the things she asks him to do.
Right.
So she finds out she's up for a promotion and that he's up for the same promotion as well. Their boss tasks them with going on one of their company's cruises in order to gather information so that they can create sort of a proposal, a presentation, where they suggest how they can bring more people in to, you know, take the cruise.
Sure.
And it's in the Galapagos Islands.
All
So
right.
they go on the cruise, and that's the first time they ever meet in person. And then Henley starts to realize maybe she had it all wrong and her coworker isn't actually the jerk that she thought he was. And, you know, things kind of go from there.
Oh dear.
It was great. I think it started off a little bit slow for me, and I was a little skeptical that I was gonna like it just based on the beginning. But actually, once they set off on the cruise itself and like they meet and like they start interacting with each other and, you know, thinking about their relationship or their impressions of each other, well, Henley specifically thinks about her impression of him, I started to find it really cute. Like, I really like the dynamic that the author wrote between the two of them. I also like the extra things she threw into the story, like Henley's real struggle at her workplace to prove herself, just because she was a woman.
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
it was a little harder for her, and she worked so hard, and the realization she had that, you know, work-life balance is actually a good thing, and you need to have it.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a whole side plot with her sister in it. Like, it's a whole bunch of things. And I think it really came together maybe like a third of the way into the book. Because the beginning, like I said, was a bit slow. But I really enjoyed it. I didn't think I would enjoy another coworker romance type thing, but this was really fun. And it definitely helped that there was a huge travel aspect to it in the Galapagos Islands. It totally made me want to go on a cruise in the Galapagos Islands, which is a good thing for the author. I think she did that part very successfully. But I also really like that at the end of the book, she doesn't shy away from tackling the whole, or confronting the whole, like, workplace issue that this person is going through. So yeah, it was a really great book. I would recommend it. It comes out on January 26th.
My first book that I want to talk about would be Super Sons of Tomorrow.
Nice.
It centers on the continued adventures of John Kent, who is the son of Lois Lane and Clark Kent, as we know him to be, Superman.
Yeah.
And John is, as we've mentioned in several other videos, the biggest cinnamon roll in the DC universe. Like, we're talking the cinnamoniest roll of all the cinnamon rolls, because he's just like, he has a little Superman hoodie, and he's a year younger than than Damian Wayne, or a couple of years younger, and he's just like, I just want to do the right thing. Oh, my powers are different because I'm half human. It's a lot of new stuff, and it's the foil to Clark, who is indestructible, and now here's the one thing that throws him off his game, because he sort of figured that he can't really, look, Lois is in charge, so he sort of figured that out. So he's working with that, and Lois is like chill for this. To counterbalance
Why does that not surprise me?
Right? So to counterbalance that, to create like Junior World's Finest, would be Damian Wayne. He's the other super son, who is the, you know, biological child of Bruce Wayne and Talia al Ghul, technically heir to the, you know, League of Assassins, who is now Robin currently, and also still the biggest jackass you will find. It's like they're literal polar opposites. But throughout the entire saga of the Super Sons, and the first time they sort of like had to work together because their fathers thought it would be a good idea or whatever, they've actually sort of created that kind of bond.
Aww.
And of course Damien's a jackass still, and John just doesn't know any.
Are we really surprised?
Not really. And then John just doesn't know any better but to be just nice. Like, he just does not know to be. He just doesn't know how to be anything else but nice. It's almost kind of frustrating because all of these edgy kind of like, I've got angst, and he's just like, I just want to do good. It's the cutest thing.
I love him.
So for him to meet Jeff Johns' future Teen Titans from the Jeff Johns run of the Teen Titans. So we've got a morally ambiguous, morally gray, nigh practically evil Tim Drake coming back into the time stream to prevent some terrible disaster, going full on Bishop from Days of Future Past. We got our kid, you know. And it just, you know, was crazy because the Teen Titans got involved and the actual like league got involved because, you know, John Kent is actually the target for whatever reason, and future Tim is just trying to change the story of their lives. I love that they took one of the best things that Jeff Johns did in the Teen Titans run and breathed some new life into it. And it was really great to see all of that stuff, especially with all of this. So if only for that kind of nostalgia, if you like that run, you're gonna want to see, okay, what did that,
Gotcha.
How did that affect sort of like the present? Was it the best sort of Super Sons story? Maybe not. I'd like to think maybe the first.
I think the first one.
The first run.
The only one I've ever read.
Yeah, because they're about. I think there's about. And I think this is the last, if I'm not mistaken. This is the last big TPB of Super Sons. So for them to end sort of like on a high canon universe, like joint realities note, was pretty cool from a narrative perspective. And so many big players. Yeah, the fact that Superman is in this book, and so is Bruce, because duh. Dads, right?
I love it.
And a bunch of other stuff. And the alternate reality future Justice League. I say that in quotation because they're not exactly the League. And in that future, it's Connor who's Superman.
Yeah,
and,
that's right.
You know, and for them to sort of go herring after Tim, going, we're gonna, like, that's our friend. That's our friend. He's jacking everything up. We gotta, like, do something. And Cassie's there in full regalia as Wonder Woman of the future.
I can't believe that. I'm just like,
I mean,
girl,
go. Get it. You
right?
know,
Girl,
and it's like, and that's a believable Superman and Wonder Woman thing. No offense to people who like the old
Not
Clark.
wrong.
And so to have them sort of like do their thing was pretty cool. Bart was there as the Flash, and it was kind of awesome. So do it for that. And otherwise, you start from the start. Still the stronger ones at the start. So here you go.
My next book is actually one that I read with DJ and Rachel. We read it for the Paranormal Book Club's last pick of 2020, and it was Born Wicked by Jessica Spotswood. And I don't think any of us had read it before this, but I am a little bit intrigued to continue the series. So Born Wicked is about Kate Cahill and her sisters, and they're kind of seen as eccentric, especially because they're very well educated, and they're kind of reclusive, so they only like stay at home for the most part, except the real secret is that they're actually witches. And if they ever got discovered by the Brotherhood, who is basically the most powerful like political governing force in their
there's always
town, there's obviously going to be consequences to that. But their problems get even bigger when Kate is now on the threshold of having to choose between being married off or joining the Convent of Sisters. And she discovers that there is actually this sort of prophecy that pretty much spells the fate of her and her sisters out, and it's not a good one. So she's kind of determined to do what she can to change their fate, and that's a big portion of this book, basically. And you know what? I actually enjoyed this one more than I thought I would. I think my real big complaint is that the world itself and the setting itself, like, it felt cool, but it was also kind of a mishmash of a lot of things, and it felt, I don't know, disjointed in some ways, and I think that also kind of threw me off. The first half also of the book feels very, very slow because it's mostly just them going about their day-to-day tasks and, like, I guess new players being introduced to their little community. And I was reading it because I was still slightly intrigued by the plot, and I also am a sucker for stories about sisters, so that was really helping a lot. I do think the second half improves very much on the first because the love interest got really great. I think he's wonderful. The plot gets really interesting. The one thing that did suffer in the second part was like the sister relationship wasn't quite as well developed as I would have liked. There's a lot of like misunderstanding between the sisters just because they have different perspectives on things, and that's cool in a book, but I feel like it wasn't as developed as I would have wanted it to be. I still thought it was pretty intriguing. The way it ends is kind of a cliffhanger, so I'm a little curious about how the rest of the series goes, especially because I've been told that it actually gets better with every book, so I'm mildly curious. I'm not in a rush to continue it, but I definitely did find the beginning of it to be pretty interesting. So there's that.
All right, now to wrap it all up.
For you.
For me.
It's like, I'm not even there yet.
For the X-Men, well, no, yeah, that's them.
Is it? Is it the wrap-up? Are we talking about?
It's one of the wrap-ups. I would like to think, and again, this is just my head, this is not how people sort of publish this thing, but I always feel like a 6-issue comic run is always kind of like a season on its own, or like a mini-series,
that's
right?
Fair. So you think that's like just about the right time?
Yeah, so for that run, if the run was a show, every
Gotcha.
group of 6 is like season 1, season 2. And so I'm talking about Excalibur 6 to 12 and Marauders 6 to 12, which were supposed to be part of the larger Dawn of X books that sort of collect everything.
Yeah, I thought so.
Which I've been talking about Dawn of X all year last year. But because Kindle Unlimited has caught up finally with the release of the trade paperbacks, so I'm not collecting like individual issues, I'm just reading them. I actually finished those two things before they actually published them in the collected edition. So I do that sometimes when I do my thing, and I was like, I count 6. Hey, I finished the arc. That's one trade paperback. If I read like 5 issues off, separately. And I'm going to talk about Excalibur first because I just feel like everything that's happened in Excalibur right now, revisiting of individual folks' is sort of like where are they now type arcs, right? So you've got Rogue and Gambit who are part of.
Where are they now?
Right, because now suddenly you have a bunch of folks.
I feel like it's a super special when you
It is, though. Where are they now? Because with this whole Dawn of X thing, the whole world has changed. You do want to know. It's like, what's everybody doing? Like, for example, the Wolverine family is playing Russian roulette with their claws. With Gabby...
Oh, yes, I remember.
You know what I mean? It's like that's how I find out that Gabby's still around. Just because she's playing Arbiter to Ken and Wolverine going, all right, spin the bottle.
So weird.
And just,
They have a very odd family.
Well, if you've got a healing factor and a lot of time, what do you do, right?
Still odd.
I can't even. So on that note, Excalibur. So you've got the Jubilee arc where, by the way, so you've got a bunch of folks who have to go to like Otherworld or you know the other world. I don't even know what it's called anymore. I apologize. Where it's a convergence of alternate universes and what have you, and other planes of existence. It's the magical side of things, which Excalibur always sort of explored. And Jubilee and her baby, the baby's a dragon in that other world. It's a thing. Rogue and Gambit and their relationship sort of is explored, and how Rogue is tied to certain things there. So there's Apocalypse is in there with his unpronounceable name.
Oh yes, I remember that. So when we were all just like...
Yeah, it's like, my name is no longer Apocalypse. It is, and then in Krakoa, whatever, there's like a big A, and then just one of them, I think it was Boom Boom or somebody, was like, yeah, I'm not pronouncing that. I'll just call you Apocalypse. Right, Richter is in there, and a bunch of stuff. So, and of course, Captain Britain herself, Betsy Braddock, who is, has taken on the mantle. What's terrible to me is that it sort of resolved itself, so we're halfway between issues 1 and 12, where, alright, I'm just Captain Britain now, and this is how it is. Because it took a violent shift, and the 12th issue just sort of pivots straight into the new part of the franchise, which is X of Swords. So an old thing happens, so it becomes like sort of like a foreshadowing of, well, this is setting up the next big arc, and it was, and so it felt kind of, all right, that's how you resolve it. There's a bunch of other things too, but then hey, let's forget all of these other things that we were worrying about, because guess what, something big is happening. And that's how I felt like it ended. It didn't feel final, it just felt shelved to me personally, the arcs of these characters, to make room for the
next one
crossover, which is a stark contrast to the Marauders arc, because not only do we resolve Kate, she's going by Kate now, which is, hey, once was a time she was going by Sprite. So you know what? There have been better choices. I'm a personal fan of Shadowcat. Kitty is also a favorite.
I like Kitty. I like
Kitty's also a favorite, but Kitty was the young teenage, little...
Yeah, I think like...
She was the little girl that was brought to the mansion.
Not so much.
But the relation... So highlights of this Marauders run, that Storm has called out that Kate is a daughter to her.
Ooh, heavy breathing.
Oh,
even
boy.
For me.
It's just, and because something happens to Kitty at the end of Marauders 6, where they're like, are you freaking kidding me with this? We can't stand for that kind of thing. And so for Storm to be up in arms, so that's one. So it's the surrogate mother, the actual mother, Aurora, and Kitty. Because Aurora was actually, of all the X teams she could have joined, she could have joined freaking X-Force, you know what I mean? But no, she's on the Marauder, rescuing mutants from different parts of the world who can't get to their, particular Krakoan gates to go home, basically, and to be with Kitty, because Kitty herself couldn't walk through the walls. She was the only mutant ever since the whole portal gate. She could not go through it. Bobby's there, so obviously that's a huge growth, right? From where they used to date for like a hot minute, and then eventually Bobby's gay and Kitty grew up, and they're like, you know what? We cool, and then that's it. I love that bond that they have.
I think
it's a very good friendship. Bishop is there as her sort of like red, bishop, I guess. I don't know. Because she's the Red Queen, and you got the Bishop. But for Emma Frost and the Kitty Pryde, for the White Queen and the Red Queen to be in 100% alignment, when the first time we literally meet them, and for years, even in the Whedon run, which I loved, they were always at odds. In fact, there's a quote from Kitty out there that says, the very first time I ever faced evil was when I faced off against you, paraphrased. So when I think evil, your face is the first thing that comes to mind. So for that, in the new world, to be completely subverted, and for them to go, we're doing this for the greater good, you and me. And you got your ways, I've got mine. I'm glad that you trust me with you. and for Emma to play a huge hand in this is great, which means the setup for so no mention of X of Swords at all in this last one. It is pure, all about Kitty and what that'll and what she's gonna do moving forward, which to me is just I love it. I don't want to spoil anything more. It is easily my favorite X title, because there's only so much of the Summers family you can I mean, not in a bad way. It's, do I really need another walkabout with Scott and his 2 kids?
No,
I don't
not
like
really.
You know, I mean, I loved it. I cried. It's like, oh my god, he's spending time with Nathan and Rachel. But then I'm like,
then you're like,
I'm good. This is like, how many more Summers dinners do we need with Uncle Wolverine? Because Mom and Dad and Uncle Wolverine are special friends. I mean, how many more of those can you... I'm not against it. I'm not, in fact, I kind of love it a lot for many reasons. Not probably the most popular ones, but there's only so much of that you can take. So for me, this is the best one of them all.
I'm still laughing. Okay, I'm gonna finish off this video with a book that it was on my 10 to read in 2020 list, and I've had it for a while. And I ended up really loving it, so I'm kind of mad I waited so long to read it. I think I was just nervous because it had been so hyped up and so many people have loved it. And I rarely read from this genre, but when I do, I tend to be able to pick out the ones that I'm going to enjoy the most. And luckily this book was one of those. It is a book called The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, and it's historical fiction, which, like I said, don't read a lot of. So basically The Nightingale is the story of 2 sisters, Vianne and Isabel, and basically it tells what happened to them during World War II, I want to say. Part of it they were together, part of it they were apart, and they had vastly different experiences because they're very different personalities. And I'd actually listened to this mostly on audio, although I did read a portion of it as an ebook. And the thing is, like, at first I was a little skeptical because I didn't know that I would love either sister, because they're a little extreme polar opposites. Like, Vianne is a little bit more subdued, she's kind of reserved, she always sort of goes with like whatever everyone else is saying that you should do, whereas Isabel's like the firecracker who's like, I'm determined to do this because it feels like the right thing to do, and like, I'm gonna make my own path. So she kind of like passionately disobeys things because, you know, that's just what she has. But like, here's the thing, like, the way Kristen Hanna wrote them, she managed to convince me that I cared about both of them in very different but also equal like levels. It was just fascinating too to read a story where it's about ordinary people during World War II, not so much people that are like on the front lines all the time, or people who are like actively being nurses or working as communicators, or people who are fighting as actual soldiers or part of the military, or in the political governments, or spies, you know, that sort of thing, which is sort of what I expect from most historical fiction. But in this one, they're ordinary people trying to do their best to survive, and to survive sort of with their own mental and emotional states intact despite the grief and the horrors that they go through, because they go through a lot of stuff. Isabel is a little bit more involved in sort of like a rebellious movement in France at that time, so she's more of like the traditional heroine that I would expect from a historical fiction novel. But Vianne, who I I underrated her at first, and then as I kept reading I was like, she's actually doing what she needs to do to survive. And it was like heartbreaking. Both her and Isabel's stories were heartbreaking, but it was also like extremely moving to see like people are capable of extreme bravery or extreme like goodness despite the fact that they may be in a very dark place or a situation that seems impossible. And like, it's not like they'll handle it perfectly either, because like, who in their right mind is actually prepared for that sort of thing, you know what I mean? And it, you know, at the end of the day, it's like push comes to shove, what is the thing, where's the line that you draw, and how are you gonna hold to it? And I think that's the most incredible part of The Nightingale, really. It's like watching these 2 sisters be like, this is where I draw my line and this is what I'm gonna do. Like, no matter the consequence, no matter what it means, it's something I'm gonna do. And the funny thing is, like, while they spend the majority of this book apart, it's undeniable that a lot of the story also affects their relationship with each other, and you kind of see a deeper sort of bond between them. You get it both through like them each, you know, giving perspective on their history with each other and also interacting with each other in the present. So I personally, like, I love this book. It made me sob for like the last couple of chapters, which I was not surprised by, honestly, because World War II fiction, let's be real, it was bound to make me cry at some point, right?
Yeah.
It was such an incredibly moving book, and I'm so glad that I finally got the chance to read it. It is just as good as everyone has promised me it would be, and I would highly recommend checking it out if you haven't already, although I'm probably one of the last people in this community to pick that book up, so you might have already read it already. Anyway. And with that, we bring this What We Read to a close, which is pretty exciting. If you have any thoughts on any of the books we've talked about, please let us know, and we will see you guys in a new video soon. Bye!